This is Soccer 101 with Moon and Rocchio.
All right, welcome back to Soccer 101. Rocc, let's just get straight into talking about things. We got a couple things to cover. Obviously, it hasn't been the greatest, last 4 matches or so. We had another draw, 0-0, but we did get a shutout at home. That's great for Berkey. It's great for the stats there. Not exciting for the sold-out crowd. And not exciting for our 11th place in the West team as far as gaining points on anybody, especially Portland. But we got together today. We're talking about this weekend. They're heading to Dallas. There's a little bit of international news. And what's your takeaway from the Portland match there, Rocc?
I mean, it's just another disappointing game for the offense. I mean, I think that's the overwhelming takeaway that a lot of people are going to have is that, you only generated 2 shots on target despite, generating a solid amount. I think it was 15 shots total. 15 shots is fine against a solid defensive Portland team. 2 shots on target, not good. They continue to generate shots to the point where they are top 3 in the league in both set play and open play shots. But they are middle of the road in both XG and actual goals when it comes to that. And it's because they have one of the, if not the lowest shooting percentage and percentage of shots that are on target in the entire league. And I think no matter how good the defense is, and obviously Roman Berkey will be a huge storyline this entire year, right now it's the offense and it's the finishing that will be perpetually the storyline until, well, it isn't. And I know this sounds maybe a little bit like an overreaction. Maybe it is after a game where you score, being only 1 game removed from scoring 3 goals against Inter Miami. But nonetheless, it's another game of a lot of shots and no goals and another 0-0 tie. And that's something that City fans didn't have to deal with last year. Only 1 of those the entire year last year. And we're already up to 3 right now, Moon, and we haven't even hit the midway mark of the season.
Yeah, I keep preaching about finishing and how it's just frustrating. I mean, Parker just had a sitter, dude. He threw it right into the leg of a defender. Kudos to the defender for sticking a leg out there, but come on. It looked like we had Klaus with the goal, but he was called offsides, rightfully so. With the finishing, tell me something. You know the stats, and I hate to put you on the spot here, but obviously the finishing is going to come with more shots, more opportunity to finish. Are there fewer shots? It feels like there are fewer shots, week in, week out than we had last year. Are there fewer, or are we just not finishing?
They are 3rd in the league in total shots, and they are 3rd in the league in shots from open play, and they are 3rd in the league in shots from set pieces. And that's been without Lowen for a huge chunk of the season. The shot quantity is no different from last year. In fact, it is better than last year. Quality, though, that's where everything changes. Because, like I said, Stats with Michael, or Tactics with Michael, is on X at Chat City Tactics, and he actually threw out a fantastic stat. They have the 5th furthest average shot distance in the MLS at 18.6 yards, and he actually has it right here. They're not worst in the league, but they are 2nd worst in the league at shooting on target at only 28%. And so right there, I think you're seeing two pretty good numbers as well, where we see 3rd in the league in set plays and open play shots. That's quantity, and then you have 5th furthest shot distance and the lowest shots on target. Well, that's quality and finishing right there. I know there's a lot of other stats we could jump into, but those are 4 pretty good numbers for breaking down a team with a high quantity and a very low quality of shots, and that's the issue right now.
Yeah, man, what a rough combination of stats for fans to have to deal with.
But here's the thing. I do want to say, how much of this is going to be changed by Edward Lowen being in the game? Because, and I used this analogy earlier this week on 101 ESPN, when you see like a good shooter in basketball, and let's say they lose their point guard, and all of a sudden their points start to drop, and you're like, well, how are your points dropping? You're a pretty good scorer in your own right. Well, it's because my starting point guard puts the ball right here where I want it. He puts it on the laces, he puts it right in the pocket, and I don't even have to think about shooting the ball. I have a feeling that there's been a lot of backup point guard passes to the shooters on City this year without Edward Lowen. And so I just wonder how much with Lowen, when he's playing a full 90 and he's 100% integrated, how much does the shot quality get better here for City? And I know a lot of other players have to be responsible, but I'm just saying I do think we're going to see an uptick with Edward Lowen now being a 90-minute every week player.
Yeah, I sure hope so, man. And that was his first start, I believe, at home since March. against Portland, and we should have taken points from Portland.
Sure.
Honestly, when it comes to more opportunistic passing, Portland, with no weapons, no real creativity, no real
counterattacks suck, don't they, when they're going against you? I mean, that's what happens when you're breaking 9 guys forward. They had 4 different chances, I think, where it was 4-on-2 going back at about the halfway mark with the counterattack, and luckily City was able to hustle back a couple times and not get scored on. But yeah, man, they were getting beat on the counterattack, and like you said, credit to Portland for really jumping those counterattacks the way they were.
And they're going to continue to get beat on those kind of things and it's going to cost them if they can't outscore.
And here's the thing:
the holes in the defense, dude. Go ahead.
Because you've been harping on this all season, Moon. I think those counterattacks are yes, like one of the reasons the counterattacks is easier for Portland is because of the scheme you're playing and the fact that you're playing so far up. But one of the reasons the counterattacks are happening is because they're one of the least consistent and accurate passing teams in the entire league. And usually those counterattacks come from a bad pass that then is what triggers the counterattack from the other team. And I know that's something you've been hitting on a lot, is not just bad defense, but this is a situation where bad offense and just bad midfield play is really, putting the defense in a spot where they can't succeed.
Horrible midfield play. I mean, there's so much to talk about when it comes to the training ground. The first thing, obviously, is if you're saying that we're third in amount of shots, but a second to last in amount of shots on goal, we have no finishes, obviously, that's probably the first thing that they're dealing with in training.
Second lowest shots on target percentage, 28%.
Golly. And the second thing is you got to connect those passes in the midfield. How can you give up the ball, especially knowing that your strength is not your defense? So let's talk about Markanich, because that dude is starting to really stress me out, man. I just think he's such a skilled player.
You and a lot of St. Louis.
Yeah, you look at him and you're like, you are a skilled dude, but I don't think your mind is meant for defense. And the reason being, I'm just going to criticize, there's a lot of times where he is just caught off guard, caught out of position, and then he's quick enough to typically recover, which I think is his plan. But then you see, if you watch some of the details in his move, his body position, he's twisting this way, he's twisting that way. He's costing himself a lot of energy and giving, I think, the opportunity to the opponent to get an extra step, maybe an extra touch, and maybe even an extra shot. If we don't start finishing and our defense stays the same, it's going to cost us. We have to start finishing just to cover up some of the, I'm going to say, lack of soccer IQ in the backfield. And I think it's obviously it's a unit. It starts with your center backs. I just don't see a really well put together mind of defense from our back line very much. I understand what they're trying to do. They're going to get caught here and there when they're throwing that many men forward, but what? That was a terrible performance against a not good team.
It's funny the first thing you said about the Markanich topic there, and that was about the mindset, which is it's a theory that me and another one of the City writers have been tossing around, which is he thinks that Markanich would be a better defender in a system where his only job was playing defense because of your mindset. Whereas if he doesn't have to think about constantly being a guy who creates width offensively for the team and gets forward into the attacking third of the opposing team, if he has to think about offense and he's got to think about the ground he's got to cover defensively and he's got to think about the man he's got to man mark once he gets into the defensive third, maybe that's just a little bit too much for a guy who, if he can just focus on defense, he can lock in as a very good defender. Again, that's not my theory. That's another, because I think he's a very good attacking wing back, and I think he's playing out of position in a back four as an out-and-out fullback who then has to cover just a mountainous amount of space. Because, again, the mindset, we see guys from Thomas Totland, and I don't think we give him enough credit, just the mindset of having to cover that much ground and having to get forward and be an offensive player, having to get back and be a defensive player, constantly, over and over again, the entire game, 90 minutes, 7.5 miles. That weighs on a player. It's not an easy amount of work to do. And so I think it's funny you brought up mindset, because that's been talked about a lot with Markanich, because I think he is a very good defender. I think he's a good defender. And I think he's a talented attacking player. But I think you're correct where there's a disconnect in just being able to play both of those positions at 100% for 90 minutes, which is a lot to ask for a young player like that. And you're doing it in a system that especially tasks him on, the extremes of those those two styles. And I think you're seeing him crack sometimes. And again, I've been defending Markanich in a way because I think he plays well and he's asked to do a lot and he does a lot of it very well. But the problem is in soccer, it's the 10% you don't do well that costs your team's goals. It's the 10% that you don't do well that's on the highlight reel for the other team. That's just the way it goes. In more than almost any other sport that we talk about, the one mistake you make in a game can ruin your entire game because it's the one mistake that changes the entire game. You can play 90 great snaps in football, but you can take off 10 and you won't get exposed every single one of those ones. In soccer, if you get caught lacking one play, well, that means your line's off, and now that guy's running behind your back line for 20 yards free, and he's going to score a goal. And now in a 1-0 game, that's the entire game. And so he needs to get better, but I also think City needs to, give him more to work with.
Two things. One, I hope he's saving his money because I think he owes Berkey a huge dinner at the end of the season.
A lot of them do.
And number two, I should disagree with you. I understand the argument that if he were just to focus on defending, he would be a better defender, but I think that would come from the training ground because they would be teaching him a higher IQ and a better understanding of how to defend. I think, and I've never met the guy. I've never actually heard him speak. I don't know him. And those things would all come into play if I were coaching the guy. But from what I see, I don't think he wants to be a defender. I'm trying to think of comparisons.
Who among us? We were all 10. We were all 10 there saying, "I don't want to play defense. What are we doing? I want to score goals."
I don't know. I think there's some of us. I got there too. I got there.
You did.
And really appreciated the hidden hero role as far as the defense goes. And here's the thing, dude. If you're going to be a defender, if your starting position has a B in it, if it has a back in it, then that should be where you are an animal. You should want to destroy anybody that thinks they're arrogant enough to even come in your space. You want to intimidate, blah, blah, blah. And if your strategy, your team's philosophy in that moment or in that culture has you attacking, that is a secondary thing. And I think a lot of these guys that are asked to be so much, there's such an adrenaline hit. There's such a whatever it is when it comes to getting up and maybe scoring a goal that it takes away from the overall position and reason that you're there, and that's to defend. I'm not saying that it's a mix-up in the mindset while they're on the field. I'm saying I think it's from the training ground to the contract signed to what I'm trying to think of a good example in the past. Gareth Bale was a left back, and then the guy was so freaking fast, and it started to make sense for him, and he was not a great defender for a minute there. It started to make sense to move him into other positions. Yeah, and I'm trying to think
of
some others. There was a Liverpool one as well.
The funny
There's
thing
a
is you
few
bring that
examples of defenders that could score goals and whatever, and in the moment you should be an animal to score a goal. But think about Parker. Parker scores goals here and there, but the reason that we talked about him in the beginning and the reason that he can be an exceptional player is because he's a good defender first.
But we talked about this in the offseason about how when they brought in Dewar and they brought in Totland, and we talked about the importance of fullbacks, and we talked about how over the last 20 years. How it's changed, especially in the last 10 years. The fullback play has changed worldwide. Not in that I don't think the MLS is excused from that. And I think just the example you use, if Gareth Bale's development happens today, Gareth Bale stays at left back and becomes an offensive out and out wing back in today's soccer, because that's something that's become a tactic that's been used wildly over the last 5 years. And so my thing about Markanich is that I don't actually think you say it's number one defense, number two everything else. If you look at
wait, I take it back. Never mind number one and number two. It's you don't get to be that guy until you've got all the basics covered with the defensive skill.
And my thing is I just don't think that's City's perspective on things, because if you break down a City game, in my opinion, where is Anthony Markanich making the biggest impact? And where has he made the biggest impact on this team since July of last year? And it's in the buildup, and it's in creation, and it's in that left side overload with him, Lowen, and Celio Pompeu that has become the backbone of their build-up offense this entire season. This is why I was saying about putting him in a better position to succeed. If that was the thing that Markanich was best at, and he was a left back and a back five or a back three, we would all say that's a very good thing for your number one duty to be. And that's a very good thing for that to be your most important contribution to this team game in and game out. But the problem is, because he's in a back four and because he's a fullback, we want to, and I don't disagree with you, but I'm just talking about your perspective and City's perspective, we want to say defense has got to be number one. But I just don't know if City agrees with that because of how they have used him for now almost an entire year.
Yeah, and
that's the mistake. That's the mistake you want to talk about.
Well, I'm just saying, and if that works, if you can get away with that, if that's the backbone of the last two losses and last two draws, then okay, I don't get it.
It's contributed.
That's all I'm saying.
But here's the thing, though.
We're 11th place in the West.
You're right, and it contributes to the 3-3 draw against LA against Inter because he's caught keeping a man onside for the third goal. But I don't want to say it contributed to the draw against Portland because the defensive mistakes that happened on his side didn't lead to a goal, and the left side playmaking almost was part of the buildup of the offsides goal for Klaus and was crucial in a lot of your other most impactful buildups in that game, which it kind of just highlights my point, which is that's where he makes the biggest impact. That's where he needs to, because the issue on this team is the offense. And the issue on this team last year that we never stopped talking about was their inability to have any kind of consistent, playmaking offense when teams would sit back and let them have the ball. Well, that left side playmaking has been one of the best ways for them to break down set defenses this whole season. And I just wonder, where would this offense be if you didn't have that?
Yeah, I totally know what you're saying, but like offenses are it can be so emotional, it can be so fickle. Yeah. Strikers are so
fickle's
whatever.
a great word for it right now.
You know what I mean? But when you look at this team, you see skill. We have some offensive skill. Whether we have figured out how to match it, with personality to personality, that has yet to be seen. But either way, there is some skill there, and there will continue to be skill because that's usually what the league is bringing over. They're certainly not bringing over defenders. So what I'm saying is the difference between an 11th place and a possible give you a chance at the playoffs sort of team is going to be consistent defense. And those kind of mistakes, and I don't mean to single out Markanich because he might be the nicest guy on the team. I'm just saying, if you watch this last match, there's a lot of times where he's not even watch him in certain positions where he doesn't need to pressure the ball or isn't necessarily the guy that's in the frame. Watch where he is off the ball. He seems kind of lost, and he's not really. He doesn't look like he wants to be a defender, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm not even saying that in a moment-to-moment way. I'm saying he looks like a type of player that's being asked to do a lot of things, and yes, he can defend, so we'll put him back here too. But I think if we have some dedicated, just animal defenders, it will make the difference between an 11th place team and maybe a 6th or 5th, even if the offense isn't hitting. Save a goal. Take one goal off that Miami game, and we take the Miami match.
Yeah.
Take one goal off one or two of these other matches, and we're 1-0. These draws will be fewer. We have so many freaking draws. And that would be the difference. I'm not saying it's going to get us into the highlight reels every single week, and I'm not saying the defense is going to get us to first in the West. I'm saying that we would be a better competitor in the West right now if we just had a bit of a more just angry, scary, and motivated defense that had a real soul to it. That's all I'm saying. And I know it's not sexy to talk on the radio about freaking defense.
Well, listen, people want to talk about the defense with this team right now because the offense is the bigger topic, but trust me, every week, let's talk about the defense. Let's talk about the big. Roman Berkey wants us to talk about the defense because he's sick and tired of these 1v1s.
He's sick. Dude, if we didn't have Berkey, do you know where we would be?
We might not be talking about that enough. That's a good point.
Start there. We've got the freaking goalie of the year. We've got the top guy.
Well, he's not an all-star
in the league. This dude
he's not an all-star.
is the. Yeah, that's ridiculous. He's the best goalie in the league, and we're 11th place. Of course, we should be talking about the defense. Again, the offense is going to be fickle, and they'll come around and whatever. If the defense gives them a chance. Remember we were talking about Chiellini at LAFC when he came in? It made the difference. It made one slow guy at the end of his career, but a true out-and-out defender that people are scared of. He can hold his ground even if you're twice as fast as him. It would make the difference. It would give the team an opportunity to be mid-table, maybe get into the playoffs, and then, we got lucky. Our offense figured it out. You know what I mean?
We started this segment with you asking me whether or not I think about the shot quality or the shot quantity from last year to this year. So I'm going to close this segment asking you a quick comparison. Do you think this team has relied more on Berkey this year or last year?
Oh my gosh, it was more visible last year because there was so much excitement. We were winning matches, and he was saving some ridiculous save that would get us a win. But he has made more saves this year that have prevented losses.
I think that's the correct way. Yeah. That's the good
I think 100% he's been a bigger part of keeping us not last this year than he did first in the West last year.
One last stat here, because we had some positivity there. Everyone's freaking out about the 9 draws here. Well, Moon, it's only really happened a few times, but I looked about the last 5 years of MLS season results. 3 years ago, Nashville finished 4th with 18 draws. So there's hope.
And that's what I mean. That, if it's such a screwy league, defenses are terrible everywhere. This is infamously bad.
There's a lot of teams where the offense is really bad too.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's like some little things can happen, and this team can go from 11th to 7th to 5th, and in a playoff system, we're not talking about you got to win the table. This is a lot
of winnable games coming up too.
Yes, this is
a lot of winnable games.
So you can really screw off half of the season, really, and just have a good run, as we saw last year. Have a good run, position yourself to actually maybe have a shot at the playoffs, and then all the rest of your season doesn't matter. You just have to perform for those playoffs. I think it's the defense that's going to silently and heroically get us into the opportunity zone, and then you just have to hope that you figured out finishing by then. That's why I'm preaching about defense.
Fair enough. Moon, my YouTube and my Facebook shorts are being taken over by predictions and, starting 11 predictions for the Euros. So you got any big news about some Euro stuff going on, or some international stuff going on?
I got nothing for the Euros, but I was reading over the press release from U.S. Soccer that was talking about Berhalter selecting their 26-player roster to represent the U.S. in Copa America. It opens in Bolivia on June 23rd. That's going to happen in Dallas. A lot going on in Dallas in these next couple weeks. We're taking on Panama. The U.S. is taking on Panama on the 27th in Atlanta, and then concludes July 1st against Uruguay in KC. Prestigious tournament to be held in 14 venues in 13 cities across the U.S. this summer. Coming off an exhilarating 1-1 draw against 5th-ranked Brazil, the U.S. men's national team, Berhalter did select the 26 players that will represent the U.S. MNT.
I cannot believe they got a draw against Brazil after that Colombia match. Unbelievable.
Pretty unbelievable. The U.S. team has done nothing but stress me out, get me all excited. These last couple. Well, honestly, the last decade and a half.
Yeah, I was going to say, what time frame are you about to draw out here?
So just a reminder, on the groups, here's how the groups break down. Group A is Argentina, Peru, Chile, Canada. Group B is Mexico, Ecuador, Venezuela, Jamaica. Group C is USA, Uruguay, Panama, and Bolivia. So we got the good group here. And Group D is Group D is Brazil, Colombia, Paraguay, Costa Rica. Not too many surprises here as far as the.
There's no excuse to not get through the group stage.
Yeah, as far as the picks, so I'm not even going to go into all the player picks. We'll post it somewhere. But yeah, I expect us to go through here in Group C. If
two local kids on the roster. Shouts out to Riemann Sargent.
Yeah, Riemann Sargent back on it, per usual, as they should be. They should win Group C. If they don't, it'll be a huge letdown. So good luck to the U.S. men's national team. And then it's time to talk about Dallas.
One other national team bit here as we run into the Dallas. This is kind of transition us in here because Kyle Hebert is going to miss the game in Dallas because he's at camp still for Team Canada. They have not finalized their roster just yet. So he's still at camp for Team Canada, so it looks like he will not be available for Dallas. Obviously, that thins out your defensive depth a little bit. Some other notes from the midweek in addition to Kyle Hebert, and that was the big one was Caden Glover and Johnny Klein, City 2 players, and obviously Caden Glover, the first youth contract signed for St. Louis City. They both have been running with the first team this whole week, and I think with the injuries, obviously Ostrak, Rasmus Alm, and now Kyle Hebert not being in, I think they just might need to fill in the roster a little bit, so we might get a trial for Klein, or we might see Glover get his first shot from the bench this season, I should say. I'd like to see one of them. I doubt we see both of them, but obviously would be very intrigued. Love it anytime we get to see the young players.
Yeah, I got a feeling if we're up 2 or 3 goals by the 80th minute, we may see one of them.
2 or 3 goals by the 80th minute. That's funny.
Honestly, that's the hope. Listen, if this offense can just find itself a little bit, I don't think that's unreasonable against this Dallas team. Now, I know that they're going to be on the bounce back.
It's going to be a weird game.
Yeah, they're on the bounce back because they fired their coach, and a lot of times, even in a crappy team, that kind of stirs up something. It's like sometimes it can be a little EpiPen for a team that's suffering after they fire a coach. All of a sudden, there's a little bit of a result there. I'm hoping that's not the case. It shouldn't be. Dallas is not good.
No, they're not. And, of course, Dallas was the team that you had the first 0-0 tie of the season, 27 shots in the game, 7 shots on target. Those were both either tied or outright season highs for the City offense this year, and you didn't get anything past Dallas in that game. And, well, the thing is we have to throw all that completely out of the window, as cliche as that sounds, because they fired their coach. They now have an interim head coach, Peter Lucien, or Lucien, I should say. Lucien. It's a weird name to say. I saw pronunciation. I wanted to get it right there. So they threw out pretty much the baby with the bathwater a little bit, and I don't know really what to say about this Dallas team because we don't really know how they're going to play. They're not a very talented team. They're a better defensive team than they are offensive. That's for sure. They're also having some real offensive issues, some real finishing issues. Musa is their leading scorer with 5 goals. That's been a nice, obviously, addition for them this season, but I think they probably want a little bit more than 5 at this point. So if anything, this should be a game that you can solidly win 1-0. But at the same time, I feel like I'm stepping up a little bit by just saying they're going to get the 1.
Yeah, they fired Nico Estevez. They got a little bit of injury stuff, but they are definitely underperforming as far as what they were expecting. They are winless in their last 5. They had a 3-0 lead in their last home match and then gave up 3 goals in 30 minutes to Real Salt Lake.
Yeah, well, you had to make a change there. It was the team was dead in the water after showing life at a couple different points this season. And really, the draw against St. Louis, I mean, they kind of hit a little bit of a stride after that with some better than not terrible results. But I just still don't know what to feel. Cornell said in both his presser yesterday and his interview this morning on with 101 ESPN that you can't really bank anything from the last game. My thing, and we asked Bradley about this, is if their whole thing is we got this energy, we got a new head coach. I think City is one of the better teams to catch them for this week because, you feel good about your team until you give up a stupid turnover in minute 4 and João Klaus almost buries one to take a 1-0 lead, at home for you guys. I just think this is a team that could break that spirit and that new coach bounce. You could shatter that pretty quickly if you're City by getting those turnovers. And again, people want to complain about the lack of goals this year, and I know a lot of people want to throw out things like, well, these MLS teams have figured them out. They're still one of the best teams in the entire league at creating high turnovers. That part of their game is not gone. It's just last year they were putting those high turnovers in the net after they would force them. So that's still an aspect of this team that they're still good at, and I really do think that if we have to focus on one X's and O's thing from a game that apparently isn't going to have a lot of that focus, it's got to be the fact that if you got that new coach bump, there's nothing you want to go up less than a team that can fly, that will actually fly on the rails, go at 100 miles per hour, and maybe knock you out early. I think that's perfect. City, obviously, we've said it every week, they need to get an early goal. This week, bigger than ever with everything we've just talked about.
Yes, for sure. Going by the numbers, St. Louis versus Dallas, St. Louis has 18 points. Dallas has 14 points. St. Louis has 3 wins. Dallas also has 3 wins. The difference is St. Louis has 9 draws, where Dallas only has 5. Dallas has 8 losses. Now, speaking of losses, away, St. Louis is 0-2-5.
Yeah, they're not a good away team going back to last year. That's something we might have to dive into at some point this season is why they're really mediocre away.
Struggling away, but Dallas, the only bright spot in their entire stat bar is the fact that they have a winning record at home this year. It's 3-2-2. So hopefully we change that, put another 3 on their home record there, and come away with some points and at least get out of this bottom 11th. Can we just get above 10, please? For goodness sake.
I will say, it's got to feel good for City. They've dealt with so many injuries this year. But going into a game without Ostrak, without Alm, and with Durkin on suspension, that's another thing, is Durkin's on suspension, and Kyle Hebert is out with the national team. So, you say all that, and yet I think there's a comfortability factor, Moon, of knowing that you can just slot in Blom and Lowen into your center midfield like you did last year for so long, and there's a comfortability factor in that. And so I feel good again about having a Lowen-Blom midfield. Beyond that, I don't think we're going to see many changes from the lineup over the last few weeks. I expect to see Pompeu, Vasilev, Klaus as the front 3. It really just leaves kind of one variable right now. I don't know if I would like to see another start for Jose Kojima. I think he'd be a great person to the sixth person outside of defense. I'd love to see it. I'm not sure if we will. And then on with the injuries, or excuse me, just with the lack of Kyle Hebert, I think we can all expect the back line is going to be Markanich, Nielsen, Parker, and Totlin. So I really think the only big variable going into this game is going to be what happens with that fourth midfielder/attacker.
Yeah, before we cut out here, just a little note on Kojima. On that last match, there was some really cool flashes of great. Yeah, and he's quick. I'm not sure he's as aggressive as he needs to be yet. There was one point where if I were him, I may have scared the goalie a bit more. He kind of got out of his way when they were close to clashing. But I'll tell you what, man, another thing in these last, I'd say 2 matches, I think, just watching player to player, especially off the ball, who's really starting to get just real confidence, almost looking more veteran than he should, is Celio. That dude probably had the best shot on goal other than Parker's I wouldn't say miss, but other than Parker's shot on goal on that Portland match, Celio had the smartest and best shot on goal. He's so great and confident, just kind of waiting for a ball to bounce back out to the 18, and it's fun to see. I think we're actually, even though it's been a rough season to watch, we are seeing some growth in some of these players, and I just wanted to shout out Celio a little bit for some of his confidence. He just seems like, all right, there's something there, and I hope that we don't lose him in the next couple of years because of his build-up. Does that make sense?
Yes. You know when you're watching a game and a guy gets the ball at his feet, and you're just like, he's not going to pass this. You can see it. You're just like, yeah, he's taking a shot. I wish City had less players like that. In fact, I honestly wish only Edward Lowen and Celio Pompeu were the players who had that mindset. I wish every other player was, this next touch is either a pass or a shot. I wish there was more just that, put it back into the system and I'll go on another run kind of mindset from a lot of these attackers. But with Edu and Pompeu, I'm completely okay with it. And that's the thing about Pompeu. There's moments where I'm like, he's not passing this one until either he's going to beat this guy outside of to the touch line, and then he might throw in a cross, or he's taking a shot after he absolutely just cooks this guy and drops his jockstrap 5 yards back, which I'm completely okay with. You need that killer mentality. And I think Celio is a perfect example of a guy who The difference in him is simply he learned when to do certain things. He learned when to pass, and he learned when to take on a defender. He learned when to put it back out in the cycle as opposed to putting it into the churn. I mean, he's just a guy who the decision making is the biggest difference in his game. He hasn't made this huge jump physically. His shooting numbers, he hasn't gone from like some crazy outlier percentage of his shots hitting target. It's just he makes the right decision. And for a guy who's making those decisions in the attacking third, that's an incredibly useful thing to have. Incredibly valuable.
For sure. His maturity, there's no way it's going unnoticed. You can watch it. Remember when he first came on, there was a bit. He's got the great energy, and he was kind of frantic, and some of that was fun. The franticness is down, and you're right. He's been making some really good decisions. He typically knows. He's one of the few players that seems like he knows the right decision to be made in the moment. Nobody gets it perfect all the time, except for the geniuses like Messi and some other, just the complete outliers. But Celio is really showing some maturity in a very short amount of time, and it's cool to watch. I would encourage, if the game's not going our way, I would encourage the watchers, all the viewers out there that aren't making the trip down to Dallas, to just kind of watch some of these guys off the ball.
Oh, watch Pompeu off the ball, especially. Here's the thing you got to watch. Watch anytime Pompeu and Klaus are close to each other, because those guys' communication with the Brazilian, with the Portuguese, with just the kind of attackers they are, there is both a heightened level of verbal communication because of the language, but also they're hitting this level of nonverbal communication that teammates can hit, where magic starts getting created. And those two guys are getting close to that point, I think. Watch those two off the ball, and when they're together, and the way that they interact with each other when the other one has the ball, it's special.
Okay, Rocc, give me a prediction for this St. Louis City SC versus FC Dallas match. How
do you not beat this team? Again, I don't care. Here's the other thing. I understand. Well, you got to throw the X's and O's out the book when you get a new coach like this. I don't care. This is still a very similar roster to the one that let you take 27 shots and get 7 shots on target, and made me walk away from a game going, how in God's good name, how does a team play a game like that and not walk away with 3 points? So just with that said, you have to at least get 1-0. It's got to be at least 1-0. It's insane if it's not 1-0. I'll take 2-1 because there's a good chance that you get caught on a counterattack by Peter Musa and he has 25 yards behind, Nielsen and company to roam. So maybe it's 2-1, but anything other than that, unless it's 5-1, and I'm freaking out next week, Moon, because this has got to be a W for City. It's got to be.
I got a feeling they're going to throw everything up front, so there's probably going to be a lot of one-on-one counterattack things with our defenders scrambling back on a one-on-one kind of thing, and I think that they have the skill to stop the non-weapons that Dallas is throwing at us. Sure. I'm telling you, if I was the coach, I would go out there and say, play elementary school ball and shoot at every opportunity you can. Destroy these people.
Shoot on sight.
While they are down. Kick them while they are down. Make them cry and make them beg to not be on this team next season. That would be my little pregame talk, to just use this opportunity to be the monster. Sure. Be the monster. This is the prey. This team is ripe to die. Finish them.
Can we get you in for a pregame speech? Come on, Moon. Let's go. I'm ready to run through a wall.
You don't want to see me when I'm excited. I'm exhausted right now. It's nap time. I say 3-0 because I'm a positivity creator, and I'm creating positivity for this match. It's 3-0 St. Louis City SC. There is a way. All they have to do is shoot a time or two, for God's sakes, on goal, and don't be morons in the backfield. And they should be able to get 3-0 and hopefully reinvigorate our season, maybe make us feel like we got a chance.
Moon, to your point, we brought it up very early in the podcast. Fifth furthest average shot, 18 yards, but they're also the best team in the league at getting the ball into the box. So here's an idea. When you get the ball in the box, shoot it.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Elementary school ball. As soon as you're in the box.
Take one dribble. So bring it in from 18 yards. Take one dribble in, so we're no longer taking shots at an average of 18 yards. Take one dribble in, and rocket that.
Exactly. As soon as you're in the box, turn, shoot. As soon as you're in the box, turn, shoot. I'm going back to the basics.
Indoor
elementary
style.
drills here. Exactly. Elementary school soccer here. Throw everybody towards the goal. Oh, you got the ball in the box? Shoot the ball.
Sounds good to me.
It's going to be fine. We'll get another review and see how we did on an episode of Soccer 101 next week. Rocc, you got anything else?
No. I'm with you, Moon. Let's see some of the young players. Let's see some goals. Let's see City get a W and get 3 points.
It's going to be 3 goals.